Hello, welcome to this Word in Season. I wonder if any of you remember the BOLO that police used to broadcast out through the news channels. BOLO stands for Be on the Lookout. I think they occasionally do these today, but I remember as a kid growing up, they used to issue them all the time on Channel 7. And what they would do is put up a mugshot of the relevant criminal that escaped from custody or they were trying to hunt down, and they would ask the community to be on the lookout for this criminal to help them apprehend them. I remember going to a shopping centre just near where I lived shortly after one of these bolos had been issued for a gentleman who, unfortunately for him, had a very distinctive ginger beard. And as I walked around the shopping centre, it seemed like everyone was on the lookout for this guy. Everyone was vigilant. Their senses were finely tuned, looking for anyone with a bright ginger beard. And I assume they probably captured the guy. You know, the other day my wife Izzy said to me that we as Christians should have a BOLO for God. We should be on the lookout for what God is saying and doing around us. And that got me thinking about examples where God is clearly on the move in our church today that I just wanted to share with you today as encouragement. And secondly, just reflect on what BOLO looks like for me personally and for each of us personally. So firstly, as I look around to see what God is doing here at church, it seems like God is doing lots of things in lots of areas, but I just wanted to mention a couple that stood out to me. You know, last year we ran Alpha everywhere in this church, at lots of campuses, in the college, and we even took a team to the prisons. And it seems like there are many people keen to talk about what they believe and to hear the good news, and we saw many people give their lives to God last year or make a recommitment to God. You know, recently Jonathan shared a story with our leadership team about Emmy Wilson, who recently preached at our church. Shortly after preaching here, she paid a visit to Wooroloo Prison. There were around 20 gentlemen sitting around her, and she explained what Alpha was, and she gave a testimony of what God was doing through Alpha in prisons around the world. And when she finished speaking, she answered their questions, and then she stood up and walked into the middle of the room and said that every single one of you is able to have this relationship with Jesus. Come forward now if that's what you would like. And one by one, all 20 men gathered around her. She explained that she was going to pray a prayer slowly and that every man standing could repeat after her and start their relationship with Jesus. As the men prayed in unison, the Alpha team there joined in, praying with them. It was just a wonderful move of God. You know, we have amazing people serving from our church in Alpha and in Prison Alpha, and I regard these people as extraordinary. But if you spoke to them, they would just say they're ordinary people like everyone else. The difference is that they've simply heard from God and followed Him to serve through the Alpha course. Another example that came to mind of where God is moving is through our college. You may be aware that we run a college here at Mount Pleasant, and there are around 170 mostly pre-Christian young adults attending this college. You know, one of our ex-students recently contacted the college. They're from an atheist family, and then they said they were unsure about their religious beliefs and they wanted to talk to someone further about this. And we put them in touch with one of our chaplains here in the college to talk with them further, answer their questions and journey with them. You know, this former student only contacted the college because of the positive relationship that they'd built up with the college staff whilst they were here. And it's just one of the many stories we hear of the way God uses our staff in the college, who are all Christians, to draw students closer to God. The college is a wonderful mission field, and we know that God has a huge heart for every student in the college. So I just wanted to encourage us as a congregation that God is moving in there, and we should just keep praying for those college students. Secondly, at a personal level, being on the lookout looks like me hearing from God well and doing what He says. You know, in the Gospel of John, we find a really clear and simple picture of what hearing God's voice is supposed to look like. In chapter 10, Jesus describes Himself as the Good Shepherd who leads His sheep by His voice. In fact, Jesus says 4 times in this chapter that His sheep will know and listen to His voice. And you know, in the Middle East, shepherds in those days led their sheep from the front, rather than driving them from behind. The sheep followed because they recognized the voice of the shepherd. Jesus here presents us with a wonderful image of himself as a good shepherd with a voice, and a shepherd with sheep who will hear him well. I just wanted to encourage us all, and me as well, that being on the lookout for what God is saying to us as individuals is just so important. We need to be ready to hear from him and then obey him. I just wanted to also encourage us as a community to be on the lookout together as we encourage each other to follow God. In Hebrews 10 it says, "And let us consider how we may spur one another towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." So let's do that together, shall we? God bless you. Have a great week.